the Chicagoland Healthcare Workforce Collaborative. This is a presentation that the Workforce Collaborative actually does every year around this time. And it's just an awesome opportunity focused on college students, where you can learn a little bit more about healthcare careers. Now, myself, I'm Dr. Conway, so I am in medicine. And if I get a chance to get your ear, I'm going to try to snatch you up to medicine, because everybody knows that's what I always do. I'm one of the people in medicine that really loves my job. And today, I have the pleasure of introducing to you Dr. David Aniadike. He is a general pediatrician. And I know David, or Dr. David, as all of the kids call him Dr. David. I know Dr. David because we did residency together. He came a few years after me, and we met there in residency at the University of Illinois, which I have to say is a wonderful place to study medicine. And definitely it was a wonderful place to train. So we are very happy to have Dr. David here. He's also a board member of I Am Able Foundation, but I hope you guys will get to learn a little bit more if you really are interested in pursuing a career in medicine, and particularly pediatrics. So I am the executive director of I Am Able Foundation, which is a Chicago-based 501c3 devoted, which is a nonprofit organization devoted to raising the next generation of healthcare heroes. So just wanted to let you know a little bit of background information. Now, next slide. I'm going to ask that you will please stay on mute for the time being. We're going to definitely open up, we're going to ask you to open up your mics and pile in with your questions, because with our tech issues that we're having, sometimes it's hard to see the chat. So we're going to actually let you talk, but for now, we ask that you stay on mute. And you can put your questions in tab, and Dr. David has his computer up, so he may be able to take a look at those as well. So the other thing we wanted to do, next slide, is talk a little bit about a little bit about the role of a pediatrician and the role of a pediatrician in Illinois. It is stated that pediatricians, the median wage, and there's all different sorts of apps that you can look at, or websites that compile this information. But based on the Illinois Department of Employment Security, they have tracked pediatric wages to be roughly around $104,000 in the state of Illinois. Keep in mind that in other states, there are way many, it could be a much higher dollar amount. For example, if you're working in an area that is considered a safety net area or catch net area, where there's a great need, such as the rural areas, and some of those areas can pay more, but this is on average $104,000. It is also stated by the Illinois Employment Security Division that we have about 738 pediatricians in Chicago, and they mentioned that there's annual openings of about 16. So that's a little bit about being a pediatrician. Some other background information: pediatricians provide medical care for infants, children, teenagers, and young adults. And I might tell you, and Dr. David can tell you too, sometimes some I'm going to say big kids, small adults. So sometimes it's hard for the patients to disconnect from their pediatricians because they've had such a wonderful relationship with them. But pediatricians examine patients, they order labs, they explain test results, they review treatment options, and they work with the parents, and they work also with the actual kids, to come up with the best plan of action for that child. Pediatricians share some similar tasks with other physicians. They assign tasks to nurses, and other workers. They consult with other healthcare professionals, and they oversee the business aspects of running the office if they happen to have their own practice. And they keep detailed records about each patient. One of the things that I wanted to throw out there too is pediatricians can be found in many, many walks of life. We have pediatricians that are mostly in the office. We have pediatricians who are really working mostly in the hospital. When I was doing more pediatrics, I was doing it in the pediatric ER. Then there's pediatricians that go on to be a specialist in things like cardiology, immunology and allergy, goodness, you name it. For every field that they have it for adult medicine, gastroenterology, they have it also for the pediatric population. So don't think of pediatrics as being limited. Pediatrics has a lot of different avenues that you can explore. Finally, we're going to talk a little bit more. Our final slide, we want you to go back to the agenda and join the overview of opportunities once this is done. And you can learn a little bit more about some internship opportunities, which is one of the, I think, the highlights of this healthcare collaborative is the many internship opportunities you may be able to explore. So make sure that after this is all done, that you take a browse over to the exhibitor hall. Please make sure you stop by I Am Able Foundation for sure, and learn a little bit more about us. Our applications open up in December, and it's an absolutely free program, and it is beyond amazing, especially for you college age and even post-bac students. We also have some high school students, but we're doing some tremendous work with college students. So please make sure that you check out the exhibitor hall and all of the healthcare organizations that you might be able to see there. Bop around and check them out. Please also remember that you'll be able to log in tomorrow, right back through this Hoover app, and you can get a chance to listen to other interviews. So don't feel pressed that if you're in the pediatrics one, but you were also thinking about physician assistant, you can go back and watch it tomorrow. We encourage you to just stick with this one interview so you can get as much information about this one particular field as you can. Then you can always go back tomorrow and look at the ones that you didn't get a chance to see. They're all pre-recorded. So I think that is the basic housekeeping work that we wanted to talk about on today. And with that, I'd like to welcome, first of all of you young people who are in the room visiting with us. I think I shouted out most of you, but looks like since then we had Miriam come and join us. I think Lisa Beltran was with us before. So welcome and thank you very much for coming. I'd like to introduce to you again, Dr. David Anyadike, who's a board certified pediatrician who works in the University of Illinois area and in that region. And so I want to welcome him so he can tell you a little bit more about what it means to be a pediatrician. And with that, Dr. David, as we call you, I just want to start by asking you, what led you to become interested in a career in healthcare?
Well, hey, everybody. If you didn't hear us having fun earlier, just saying hello. And thank you for joining us today. Hopefully pediatrics becomes as close to your heart as it is to mine. But yeah, when I was younger, as a kid, even 8, 10, 12 years old, I kind of felt like, I had a lot of questions about the body. The body was just, it was fascinating. I mean, it's just amazing what the body does. But it just seemed like I knew so little about how and why. And so I had an interest in medicine from that. I wanted to know more about the body and how it worked. I wish there was a manual, but there wasn't. Yeah, I knew I wanted to be a doctor when I was growing up. I actually thought I wanted to be a family practitioner. I thought I wanted to see adults and kids. But when I got to medical school, I mean, the kids were just so much more fun than the adults. So I had to stick with just the kids. So yeah, I didn't make the decision till the very end. I was being stubborn. I thought I was going to be family practice and stick with adults and kids. And I was tolerating the adults and waiting to see the kids. And I'm like, I don't have to do this. I can just see the kids. So yeah, I decided I was going to be peds.
Okay, wonderful. So when you decided that you wanted to be a pediatrician, you had to get trained. So can you walk us through your process and the process of some students or other students, because your process may have been a little bit different. But tell us a little bit about your process of going through, deciding pediatrics before you got into medical school, that whole process, as well as medical school and then residency.
So yeah, as a pediatrician, so you'll be going through high school, and then college, medical school. Pediatrics is only 3 years of residency. It's one of the shorter ones, so that's kind of you're not in there too long, but there's a lot to learn, so it's definitely worth the time. And then for me, I actually grew up in Canada, so I went through college in Canada and actually went to a medical school in Nashville, Tennessee. And so I've kind of bounced around in the country, the two countries, to get my education. But yeah, definitely focus on every level is important. But even though it does seem like it's a lot of education, I think we'll talk about it later too. Um, I often tell people if you're in the 10th grade, if you're in the 11th grade or 12th grade, you've already done like 11, 12 years of homework already. And that's a lot of homework you've already done, even though, you're not that old yet. But you take it a day at a time. It's the same thing with medical school. You've already done, about a decade of homework being in high school. And you look back, it doesn't feel like that much work because you just take it a day at a time. It's the same thing with medical school.
Well, Dr. David, for the young people who are out there that, because you kind of glossed through the steps that actually frighten a lot of kids. Mm-hmm. Tell me, or tell our audience, is this doable? Is it manageable? What do they really have to do to make their dream of becoming a physician or a pediatrician specifically come to pass?
Yeah, once you find your passion, honestly, it's not too hard. Like once you realize it's what you want to do, and that can be the hardest part, is realizing, trying to figure out, what you want to do. And coming to a session like this is super important. Sometimes people get discouraged when they leave the session not knowing, not having figured it out. But a lot of times I point out to people that, when you're trying to narrow down what you want to do with your life, sometimes finding out what you don't want to do can be just as important as finding out what you do want to do. Because, when you start, the list is long, the list of possibilities is long. But if you find something that doesn't quite, fit for you, that's progress. You're one step closer to finding out what you want to do. But yeah, it's, I forgot the rest of the question. But yeah, definitely coming to a session like this will help you to figure out what you want to do. And that taking it a day at a time is really a big part of it, because in my class actually had one of my classmates was in his 40s. He actually had been working, and he came back to med school in his 40s, and he was working. Just imagine being in your 40s and 50s and doing all the late night studying and doing call in the hospital. Another one of my classmates actually had a learning disability and actually had essentially like an IEP. And even with that, he did the work he had to do. I mean, it's more about just being able to do the work and ignoring some of the distractions, because, part of becoming successful is having to leave some people behind. Not everybody's going to push you forward and elevate you to the next level. Some people aren't interested in the next level, and they may try to pull you back too. So one thing you're going to find is, as you push yourself to the next level, some people will fall away that don't want to join you, and that's okay. But you will find, as you go up in education, that you'll find more people who have the same aspirations or the same passions as you, and those are the people that are going to inspire you to take it to the next level. So yeah, keep looking forward to it. It just gets better.
Dr. David, can you share with our young people, what is it about pediatrics that you love? What do you love? What makes you get up in the morning and come see the babies, take care of them? And then I'm going to ask you another question behind that. But tell me, what is it that helps you get up every morning to do what you do? And tell us, what do you do?
So yeah, the best part, is I'm a bit of a joker. Yeah, not necessarily funny jokes, but I'm a bit of a joker. Yeah, it's great being able to spend time with, young kids. When you're a pediatrician, you're dealing with age 0 to 18. And so the patients are completely different. A 2-week-old patient is completely different from an 8-year-old patient, which is completely different from a 16-year-old patient. And actually, as part of subspecializing, you can choose to see only the teenagers if that's the kind of pediatrician you want to be. You can choose to see only newborns. Neonatologists only see babies that have just been born. So you can choose to see different, aspects of that. But yeah, for me, I just liked, I love spending time with kids. I'm okay. One of the hard parts about doing pediatrics is that sometimes the kids aren't happy. Sometimes you have to give them needles. Sometimes you have to do shots. Sometimes sometimes the kids are sick, sometimes really sick. And so for some people who love kids, that can be a hard part of, they said, oh, I thought I wanted to be a pediatrician, but, I can't give them needles, or I can't, it breaks my heart to see them sick like that. And that's true. For some people, it's actually the reason they don't become a pediatrician is because they love kids so much. But a lot of times, it's part of like being a parent. I often compare now being a parent myself. I used to say the same thing about pediatrics. Sometimes, the best thing for a kid isn't, what they need and what they want may be different things. So just knowing you're doing what's the best for the kid, and it is something that can inspire people. Also, too, you're dealing with people very early on in life, so you get to influence or help people in a way that can maybe change the course of their life. If they're going through a really hard time as a child, you may be able to kind of redirect them in a direction or help them out of a tough time that'll make an impact on the rest of their life and maybe change the course of their life. And so being able to be a part of that is special. It's really great. And I really appreciate, being able to do that. Oh, you're muted, Dr. Conway.
Dr. David, can you share, thank you, can you share a story? Can you share a case that had a particular impact on you, that changed maybe the way that you practice, or something that really inspired you to keep doing your work, something specific that the students can really latch on, that really keeps driving you to do what you're doing? Any particular case or story resonates with you?
I actually, it happens pretty consistently. It's been really hard to be a teenager for the last couple of years with lockdown and with just, with the election, for example, that just came by. I mean, it's when we were young, you weren't exposed to as much. Uh, I don't want to. I'm not being political, but there's a lot of, it's when you on TV. There's a lot of more violence on TV than there was when I was growing up. A lot more vitriol, a lot more people just not being nice to each other. And being exposed to this as you're growing up can affect you. It can make life harder. It can make a lot of people are stressed. A lot of people are depressed or anxious as teenagers. And as a pediatrician, part of what we do is talk to teenagers about what they're going through, and sometimes I feel it's a great opportunity sometimes if I'm the first person that a teenager has been able to talk about these kind of things, and really kind of open up about some of these hard things they're going through, because they just didn't feel like nobody's asked, or it's nobody's really talked about it. And so it is tough, and so just talking about it and working through it, and then talking about ways to help balance out life, how to do some more fun things, and just helping people get through stuff, and then seeing that helping them get motivated and do the things they want to do again. It's inspiring. It's just it's great to see that, and great to be able to be a part of it. So yeah, no one story, but yeah, it's nice to be able to be part, to have people let you into their lives. And that's part of being in medicine in general, because people will tell you stuff as a doctor that they won't tell anybody else, sometimes because nobody asked. But yeah, it's a great profession.
From a professional perspective, in your growth as a pediatrician, is there any days or experiences that you can remember that were particularly challenging, just even
Mm-hmm.
in your journey to becoming a pediatrician?
Oh, to becoming, yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Huh. I actually in medical school at first, I actually was a biochemistry major in college. And so I thought biochemistry class was going to be easier because I did it, and didn't quite take it as seriously as I should have. So that first biochem exam came up, and I was studying, and I didn't plan it as I should have. And the night before, I realized that I didn't plan it the way I should have, and it was not going to go the way I planned. And that was a really hard night. I remember doing the calculations in my head. So if I quit medical school now, I have this much in loans right now. So if I get this job, I might be able to pay it off in 15 years, or maybe pay it off. And I seriously was considering quitting medicine that night, because I'm like, if I can't do biochem and I'm a biochem major, then this is not going to work. But after, after an hour or two, being sleep deprived and stressed out, I came to my senses and got back to studying. But yeah, there's been a few times when it's a lot of work, and you just have to stay focused on the goal. And yeah, that night I got back on it. I didn't do as well as I should have on the exam, but future exams I did better. I planned it out better. Yeah, and sleep. One thing about high school, medical school, please prioritize your sleep. Don't try cutting corners on your sleep, because it does, hurt the efficiency of your studying. That's one thing I learned in medical school. that I
That's
can
good.
tell.
It's something that I have yet to learn, but congratulations to everyone else who has done it. I understand that it helps quite a bit. I actually am being funny, but I actually believe that if you could prioritize that, I know that to be true. That's quite helpful. So we have a better sense of what pediatricians do. Tell me some of the things that you are involved in that, by extension of your work in pediatrics, for example, talk about any personal fulfillment you may get teaching, mentoring, advocacy, and outreach. I know you're involved in so many organizations. I Am Able Foundation, 100
Mhm.
Black Men. Um, I think you're involved with the Meharry Alumni Association. I don't think there's no points of advocacy that you're not actually involved in. Tell the young people, because I want them to know that they can still, because especially our Gen Zers, Dr. David, and our millennials, they are a special group of people. And the kind of things that they are standing up for today, and you mentioned like the kind of things that they're growing up
Mhm.
in and what they're having to deal with. This is a special group of people who are not just tied specifically to a career objective. They care a lot about society, and they care about their world. They care about the environment. Can you talk a little bit how a pediatrician can still make a major community impact in ways that you're doing it?
Yeah, and actually, being a doctor in general does give you a louder voice. So when you do find stuff in your life
So
that you're
true.
passionate about, then you can. It helps you to. It allows you to do more. So even just going to work every day, and if there's something you're passionate about, you can make that a bigger part of your job. But yeah, having the MD at the end of my name has helped me um, to work towards things that may not have been able to do otherwise. Some of the stuff I did with the American Academy of Pediatrics, we did some guidelines, and like you mentioned, I'm able and doing health expos, speaking on health issues. If you join a group as a pediatrician, you have a lot of knowledge and experience that you can share with others. But even if there's something that you're passionate about, being a doctor gives you a louder voice to be able to address those issues. Oh, you're muted, Dr. Conway.
Yeah, I was just trying to unmute. It's always a challenge trying to go
All right.
back and forth.
To have it
Um,
easy, I don't have to mute.
Exactly. Talk a little bit, if you will, about salary. There's a wide range salary. I know a lot of young people, when they hear the salary, $104,000, that doesn't sound very inviting. And the reason why it doesn't sound inviting is because we're thinking about loans, how much money people have to invest, how much time people have to invest in order to become a doctor. Can you talk a little bit about, pediatric salaries, but also the diversity of pediatric salaries, depending on your subspecialty and the regions? Can you talk a little bit about salaries? Because not every salary is created equal.
Right, and interestingly, in because every year Medscape, one of the web sites for doctors, does a survey on salaries, and every year pediatrics is in the bottom quarter, bottom 25% of salaries. Every year, it's never changed. Part of it, the reason for that is medicine in the U.S. right now is oftentimes what's the word, procedure based. So the more things you have to do for a patient, the more money you make. And as a pediatrician, most of what we're doing, most of our patients are healthy. Most of what we do is preventive medicine. So there's not a lot of procedures we're doing that make money. So we don't make a lot of money. But every year, and that's been as long as I've been watching, pediatricians are the most out of all the primary care docs are the most happy. if, they always ask, if you had the choice to choose your specialty again, would you choose it? And pediatrics is always number one when it comes to, primary care. And then often too, you'll see people who wouldn't do it again. They're often the people who are making the most, making crazy amount of money. But when asked if they want to do it again, they're like, no. Or if somebody asked me, would you go into medicine or would you go into this? Would you recommend it? They say no, because they're just not enjoying their job as much. The money just doesn't make it enjoyable. And being a physician, or being in a health career in general, for the most part, you're going to make enough money to not have to worry about money. And a lot of times when happiness comes up, the question is, does money equal happiness? Well, as long as you're secure and you have, you've got, you don't have to worry about your bills. That's a big deal. And if you're in healthcare, or as a pediatrician, I'm making enough money, I'm not struggling. But thinking that you have to be making $300,000, $400,000, $500,000 to be happy, it's actually the opposite. Those careers are often those doctors are often the least happy. Yeah. So I don't make as much as other doctors, but honestly, I don't think it's worth it. I'm much happier doing what I'm doing right now.
And Dr. David, I really appreciate you sharing that, because I think sometimes we do get lost in the money talk. And I think
Mhm.
happiness and fulfillment is so underrated, and
Mhm.
finding fulfillment is it's so important. I'm really glad
Mhm.
that you shared that. I also want to let the young people know that are on the call, though there are pediatricians that do make more. So there's some
Mhm.
pediatricians depend on the area, and like Dr. David said, it also matters how hard you want to work. So do you want to have a
Mhm.
busy pediatrics practice where you're seeing 50, 60 people a day, and you could barely get in there and get to know people? You got a bunch of scribes, a bunch of physician assistants, a bunch of nurse practitioners, and you don't really
Mhm.
have a relationship, but your practice is booming. You have to ask yourself, is that what you want? But also, then there's other places. Like, I have a number of friends, and Dr. David knows them because we went to residency together. That
Mhm.
are working as hospitalists. That tends to pay a little bit more, again, because
Mhm.
of the very thing Dr. David said, the acuity. When you're dealing with people that have to be hospitalized and or have procedures, the bills rack up, and the hospital makes a certain percentage more, and then the doctors get paid more by extension. So
Mhm.
sometimes hospitalists, sometimes maybe a pediatric cardiologist who's doing a major procedure. But then that gets to what Dr. David said about happiness. Sometimes doing, even that intense type of work can really weigh on people if they're unable to detach themselves from it. And to that, I want to bring up one of our babies. Melissa is one of our mentees in the program. Yes, and Melissa asked a really good question that I would love for you to get personal about. She wants to know, how do you deal with emotional crises when you really have, you know, like, for example, a patient dies. I think all of us as doctors have experienced it. Certain ones have stood out. For me, Dr. David, one of the ones that stands out more for me was not
Mhm.
actually the Pete's baby, to be honest. It was watching a kid that was 3 years old watch his mother die. Now, that one was
Mhm.
harder for me, because it was almost like I put myself in the shoes of the 34-year-old mother at that time, and I was around that age. And that really resonated with me. And looking at the little babies going into the ICU, and I'm
Mhm.
standing there, I almost lost it. So for me, that was one of those moments that I've never forgotten. That's been 20 something years. It was
Mhm.
hard to watch her die of cirrhosis of the liver, and it was kind of sudden and unexpected. It's terrible. How do
Mhm.
you manage as the pediatrician? I know you deal with a lot of well people, but there's
Mhm.
been times when you were in the hospital, especially in residency, that you had people that didn't do it.
Yeah, and yeah, you brought up a really good example. And ICU, I mean, as a trainee, you're going to see so much, a wide variety of stuff, from the very sick to the not sick at all, and all different types of sick. And I remember the ICU very well, because a lot of kids were really sick, and really struggled. And some of them were on a ventilator. Some of them were, just like on TV, you see them on a ventilator, just the machine is breathing for them until they can get better. They're on all these medicines. Some of them might have been born sick. A lot of the times we see these kids who are born with a heart problem or a liver problem or another problem, and they're struggling. A lot of their life is spent struggling. There's happy moments, and they're families wouldn't trade them for the world. But a lot of times there's a lot of struggle there. And I know when I was in the ICU, it was tough, but honestly, it the, the pediatric ICU, and I would say ICUs in general, although they're tough, I would say that that was one of the places where I really saw the most love, because especially when these kids get sick, and families, just people you hadn't seen, we often say like funerals and stuff bring the whole family together, but yeah, these tough times bring the whole family together. We would see people coming, and you just saw the family just bonding around this child, and you just saw so much love. But on a day when I see something hard, I mean, child abuse is something that I thankfully don't see very often. Well, don't recognize very often. A lot of times child abuse goes undetected, and that's unfortunate. And that's part of our job, is to ask those hard questions. And sometimes you get hard answers. And like I said, that can be tough. And then you have to go and see the rest of your patients, having your spirit having absorbed what you've just heard, or what you've just been exposed to, and it's something you have to do. You have to listen to these hard things, and try not to break down. But then you want to make sure you have a balanced life, make sure you are sleeping properly, eating properly, talking to people, doing what you would normally do, dealing with the stresses of daily living. But getting massages, or doing, if you love sports, play sports. As you get one thing that happens as we get older is we stop doing some of the stuff that makes us happy. We do more of the work, and we do less of the play. Focus, whatever's making you happy now, try to make an effort to keep that in your life. And if when you're having a hard day, or you're doing other stuff, if you love track, keep running. If you play sports, keep doing those sports. If you like writing or reading, keep writing and reading. And when you're having a hard day, take care of yourself. Keep that balance, because this isn't a sprint, it's a marathon. And you want to keep doing what you need to do to keep balanced.
Thank you, Dr. David, for sharing that. And I'd like to echo that and say, please also talk to people and let people know what's going on with you. One of the things that I see in the age of social media is that there is a perception that everybody else has got it together and you don't.
Mm-hmm.
Everybody else is happy and you're not. And it's a fake world, and it puts a lot of pressure on us. And I think it just makes us want to hide the truth of what's going on with us. And that's one of the reasons why sometimes, sadly, even in medical school and in medicine, we've seen some physicians who didn't take care of themselves, and some of them, ended their lives. And I don't want to be morbid, but I have to be honest, because this is the truth of what happens when we, as who are also people, don't take care of ourselves, medical students included. So you've got to let people know when you're struggling, when you're suffering, when things are not easy, because there's help out there. And, help begins with ourselves, and I always say, what the famous saying, doctor, heal thyself. Not that we are all good at it, but man, we got to think that way.
And even, like you said, asking for help, like therapy. I know a lot of medical professionals who go to therapists. And sorry to interrupt, but yeah, I also recommend to a lot of teenagers checking out mindfulness, because as medical students, we're taught, now medical students are taught mindfulness as basically meditation. And that's a great way to help, when things like that are overwhelming you. I recommend the Calm app, or Insight Timer is an app that actually has a lot more free content, but it's something, it's like a coach that helps you with mindfulness. And as life gets more stressful, those are things that can help you through some of those things. But sorry to interrupt. I get a little excited.
Oh, no. That was really good. And what I'd like to do right now, by the way, I love the Calm app, and I do use it myself. So in the minutes that remain, I want you to unmute if you have a question. Jump in there. Don't be shy. I see a lot of wonderful young people. I call everybody young people because you are. Jump in there, share your question for Dr. David, if it's about pediatrics or medicine in general. You feel free to unmute.
Or you can type in the chat if you're shy. Because we had a good chat. The question in the chat was really good.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yep, you can do it that way as well.
And I'm a general pediatrician. If somebody has a question, interrupt me. But there are a lot of subspecialties that we talked about, and so you can any kind of subspecialty in for adults, you can do it for kids. There's special ones like developmental pediatrics, where you're dealing with kids who have autism or people who are late to talk, and that's something I would mention as well. For instance, someone who's in ER that you mentioned work in the ER, you can actually go become a peds ER doc as an ER doc first, and then go to peds, or be a pediatrician, then go to ER.
Yeah,
If you're
lots of
not
different
interested in
routes.
medicine, pardon?
No, I said lots of different routes to the same thing.
Yeah, so you're never locked in. Like if you're finding your passion, it may be easier than you think. You might think, oh, I don't know, and then you don't have to know in a lot of situations. Like I said, I didn't decide to be a pediatrician until literally the last moment. I was really stuck on being a family doctor, and that just wasn't for me. But even I often talk about therapists, occupational therapists, speech therapists, physical therapists. When it comes to kids, a lot of times as a therapist, you're playing with kids in a way that teaches them a lot of the skills they need. So it's another job where you get paid to play with kids. And I think anytime that people pay you to play with kids and you get to see them, do well, it's great. And yes,
Agreed.
neurology. Yeah, there are neurologists in pediatrics. You are dealing with, it is slightly different, and you'll see kids from newborns who may, you may be there when a lot of times as an adult you'll see adults who already have things diagnosed, but when you're a pediatric specialist, a lot of times you're part of the people that are going to diagnose it. You're going to discover what's going on. You may be someone who's going to give the answer to the family that they've been wondering, for years and years. So yeah, neurology, you're going to there's a neurology section in peds. I see it, sorry, in the chat. And then the usual education route, yeah, I think we briefly touched on it, but yeah, in high school, you want to make sure you're getting your AP classes. College, you don't necessarily have to do biology as your what's the word I'm looking for? As your
Major or
major.
concentration.
Um,
Yeah.
yeah, it's sometimes doing something you love is people appreciate that when you're in interviews. Dr. Conway could probably comment on that more. But yeah, in medical school it was 4 years, and then pediatrics is only 3 years of residency for general pediatrics, which is one of the shortest training times,
And,
as
and
opposed to like internal medicine, etc.
and I just want to throw out there, there's a lot of different programs that are out there now. For example, at Rush, they have a program that is just kind of new, hot off the press, but they're building all over the place. Where the pediatricians, they're trying to build more pediatricians in the country, so they have
Mhm.
a kind of like a fast track program. And it might
Mhm.
sound hard, hard to imagine how you can get through medical school in 3 years. But quite honestly, if you knew you were going to just do peds, you could do the basic rotations that are required, and some of
Mhm.
the fourth year can really be cut off. A lot of the fourth year is really spent around getting an opportunity to be exposed to other things like radiology,
Mhm.
some of the other ones that that you're less familiar with. So there are some fast track ones that kind of guarantee you a place in a pediatrics residency program. It's almost like kind of, you guys who've gone to college, you know how you can get early action or early admission decisions. It's kind of one
Mhm.
of those things. So be on the lookout for that if it's something that you're interested in. Also, know Dr. David was saying that he realized that he didn't have to be forced to do family medicine when he really
Mhm.
was leaning more towards children. But people like me really enjoy both. So
Mhm.
I did medicine and I did pediatrics. So I was double boarded in internal medicine and peds. And one of the reasons why some people might choose that is because some folks want to do a subspecialty that can actually cover both. I have a friend that went to residency actually with Dr. David, and I don't know if he remembers her, Dr. Priya, and she actually did
Mhm.
allergy and immunology, and it covers both adult and children. So a lot
Mhm.
of people do, and there was another guy who did immunology, so infectious diseases. I'm sorry, and so he did it for both. So just lots of ways that we're sharing out the screen. Sorry about that, guys.
Yeah, I think we're almost out of time. There are a couple of questions though that we can
Oh, please go for
just
them
real quick.
if you can see them.
Um, Yeah, it says internships and clinical opportunities. Well, I would recommend, I mean, I'm biased, but I would go to iamable.org, ABEL. and other organizations that help bridge the gap. You can also talk to your own doctor and find out what opportunities are there where you go to get your own medical care, to shadow specialists and doctors, or to get mentors in the field, people that can guide you. And oftentimes, there's questions that come up, and they can answer that for you and guide you. And like I said, you may end up finding out that it's not for you, but even that's valuable information. But it can guide you in the right direction. The other question was, as a freshman in college, what should freshmen in college do first to prepare for medical school? And is there any advice you would give that would make you a great candidate? Yeah, there's a lot of
I am able.
yes, I am able, of course, yes, ABEL .org. And yeah, there's a lot of, I mean, I wish we could put in the chat, there's a lot of different groups out there. There are a lot of people who want to give back, who want to, it's, people helped us. Nobody gets to this kind of a situation or position in life alone. I mean, a lot of times, you'll see on, social media, it looks like they just, they're strong, they did it all by themselves. Nobody makes it on their own. And so a lot of times when we get to this point, we realize we couldn't have made it on our own, and we help other people to make it. So yeah, we recommend, finding a mentor is good if you can. And like I said, there's organizations that do that. If you can get some experience in the field, it looks good. It'll help you to find your passion as well. Dr. Conway, actually, I would maybe hand that off to you. What would be some advice you would give? Because I know you give a lot of advice to aspiring medical students. What would you recommend for advice to give to a medical school candidate?
So just a few things that I would mention. And I hate to make it so objective, but honestly, the reality of medicine is that it's very objective. And while we love to encourage people to just live their lives and enjoy their lives and be a great person, and I do think those things are important, some of the things that medical schools are looking for are 4 different things. They want a grade point average is over 3.5 because it's become more competitive and not less competitive in the past 10 to 15 years. They want a pretty decent MCAT. Somewhere the average for students that get accepted into medical school is 510 and above. That means some people are under, some people are over. So don't stress yourself about it, but just know what the assignment is. They say you have to understand the assignment, and that you have to have the strong science preparation so you can be in a good position to study for that test and do well. And you will need a lot of help for the test, but just know that's what the objective is. Try to get, as Dr. David mentioned, some clinical experience, some shadowing experience. Those are the kind of things that places on this healthcare symposium today can help you with. And certainly at I Am Able Foundation, we have a holistic approach that follows kids all the way from the day that they join us all the way until they get accepted into medical school. And mentoring is a huge part of that. And also clinical opportunities are a huge part, because a lot of these places want you to have experience in medicine as well as experience in shadowing. What do I mean by experience in medicine? That means they want you to have some direct patient care experience. They're asking a lot of you young people. I think it's a bit much. I don't think any of these things is really necessary for you to be a great doctor. But sometimes these things develop because they're trying to tease out the marketplace. And it's really unfortunate, but that's just the way it is. What do I mean by direct medical experience? Like, for example, phlebotomy, maybe EMT, maybe if someone is an MA, things like that. And I think she's asked, what are some of the good clinical jobs you should pursue? Well, here's the thing. Try not to pursue anything that's going to take you too far off your beaten pathway. That's always the thing that kind of bugs me about this whole requirement about medicine, all of these medical experiences. I do think they do help give you an insight into what other people do, because I do think a lot of doctors don't understand what other people do. So in that sense, it's really important, because I don't like the doctor with the big cape flying behind them, and they have no idea that this is really a big body, hands, arms, feet, toes. Not one person is calling a shot and making things work. But at the same time, try to pursue things that will give you great experience. Scribing is one. That's super helpful. It's not so hard to get into. CNA is great. Yes, believe it or not, CNA is great, because you know why I like CNA a little bit more than medical assistant, and I like both. Medical assistant is a longer program, and that's why I don't like it as much. If you can do a shorter program, like in the summer, that's only 6 weeks, and then you're getting in there and you're taking care of people and seeing them at their most vulnerable state. They can't take care of themselves, and you're doing everything for them. You're still seeing how the nurses are interacting. You're seeing how the doctors are interacting. I like CNA because it's easy and it's quick and it's still very helpful. I bet you Dr. David can attest to it. And I do this all the time. I never walk into a room and ignore CNA, never in life. If I walk into a room and there's a nurse there, I'll talk to the nurse about the things that she did, but I'm going to walk over there and ask the CNA, how was the patient? Like, how did the patient do overnight? How, if they have a sitter, you want the intel, the human intel. So I think those are some of the things that are good experiences. But I would also like to say, go to IAMABLE, ABEL.org, IAMABEL.org, and check us out. Our applications are opening up. I do feel like we're such a holistic organization of doctors and medical students that just love on the mentees. And that's what you need. You need the support and the love and know that you're part of a community. Any more questions, Dr. David, as we close out?
Well, I would add, as a medical assistant or as an LPN, I think you'll get, or CNA, you'll get good exposure to medicine. But a lot of times, people in those jobs, you're going to be taking orders. And some people are good at taking orders and some people are better at giving orders. And so
Yes,
there's
Lord.
certain people, you may become an MA or you may become an LPN and you'll get exposure. But I think if you're the type of person who needs to be giving orders and, then I think that will be just a point on the journey, because you're going to be like, I want to be doing what they're doing. You'll see that and it'll be really inspirational.
You will.
But in those jobs right now, those jobs are very competitive right now. So actually, if that turns out to be what you like and you're getting a good, compensation and good salary, that might be where you end up. You might be in healthcare, but in a different job than you expected. But as long as you love it, I mean, it's worth it.
All right. So as we prepare to close, there is a survey that we love for you to complete. Please make sure you do that. You can win a $100 Amazon gift card from the Healthcare Collaborative on today. So please make sure that you do that. If you stop at our booth, you also have the opportunity to win some amazing prizes as well. So definitely stop at the IAMABLE Foundation booth. Dr. David, I think we probably are supposed to be going on to the next piece for the kids. So thank you guys for stopping in. And thank you for sharing your story with us. And, we'll be around in, Miss Magnolia will be in the booth, Miss Magnolia Oliver for IAMABLE. So if you have any questions, we'll be around. And thank you for coming, guys.
Google me, ask me questions.
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. Thank you, Angelica. Nice to see all of you guys. Join in on the rest of what's going on in the main session. And we're around. Reach out to us. I can also be reached at info@iamable.org. My profile is up there. So, and I think Dr. David's profile, you can find us. So make sure you find us if you have questions. And hey there.